Indeed, this part of the show, beginning of the hour, comes from Jerry's World. You know that I am contractually obligated to spend a certain amount of time every show talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Now, much chatter has circled around like vultures Dak Prescott and Dallas as they prepare for a wild card Monday date with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Now, this is the made-for-television main event. And if you look at the NFL television ratings, the single most popular team, and it's not even close, that brings eyeballs to the boob tube, the Cowboys. Right? Fox led the way in ratings, beat CBS, beat ESPN, all these other things, because of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this game's on ABC, but this is the main event. It's an island game on Wild Card Weekend. There's no other games that day. It's the last game of the weekend. Dallas and Tampa meeting at the house that T.J. Reeves built there, Raymond James Stadium, Monday night Wild Card football. Now, in the preamble, there's been much chatter as everyone's got a hot take on that. A lot of tongues are wagging on this game. But the Dallas Cowboys defensive back, Trevon Diggs, pretty good ball player, he issued a vote of confidence for his quarterback, Dak Prescott, on him turning the corner, if you will, and silencing the skeptics, the critics, the people that don't believe in him. Now, just to prove that I am not lying about this, and you might have missed it, so maybe you didn't hear it. So this is from something called the 33rd Team Podcast. We're not sure what that is, but here is Trevon Diggs singing the praises of his quarterback, Dak Prescott. Let's go to the audio tape.
I know what Dak's going to do. I know he's a winner, regardless of what his last game was or whatever game. I always know he's going to come back with a stronger game. So, I'm never sweating or never tripping. I know Dak going to lead us to where we need to go.
All right, well, bad audio on that, but he said, I know he's a winner, and I'm never sweating. I know Dak is going to lead us to where we need to go. So that's the key part of that quote. So let us discuss. All right, the question, what do you think of Trevon Diggs, the defensive star, giving his stamp of approval, his endorsement of Dak Prescott? So I've got Goat Rodeo, True Serum, and Miley Cyrus. And we will combine these three random things together. They have something in common. We'll figure out what they have in common. And we're going to make the Baba Ganoush is what we're going to make. So to kick off the festivities this hour, this particular comment by Trevon Diggs was, the word is required. In the ecosystem of the NFL, you got to play by the rules of the game. And in that particular world, if you're asked to comment about your quarterback, you take a couple of steps back, you take a deep breath, and you do what you have to do, right? So, Trevon Diggs, if you look at this, he was doing this podcast, a little chit-chat. He put on, not really the hot seat, but it was a loaded question. It was only a loaded question if he gave the wrong answer. And to his credit, Trevon Diggs did not squirm like a worm. He had no choice. He gave the boilerplate response, as Trevon is a tad too close to the situation to have open dialogue, I would say. Could you imagine in a parallel dimension if Diggs had come out and said, oh, yeah, Dak's a loser. We can't win anything. We practice, we play all season. This defense is a championship defense, and we've got an absolute zero at quarterback. Oh, my God. That would have opened up the floodgates. Alarm bells would have been sounding. It would have been a goat rodeo, right? Utter and complete chaos if he had said that. Pandemonium, upheaval. Instead, he didn't say that. He whispered sweet nothings about his quarterback. That's what Trevon Diggs did. Bada bing, bada boom. Move on to the next. All right, move on to the next. You're good to go on that. Knock yourself out. Now, furthermore, in that other dimension over to the right, the other dimension over here, should Trevon Diggs be sweating on Dak Prescott? He says he's not sweating. So I believe he should be sweating, Get a towel. You might want to get a towel because there's likely going to be some flop sweat. If you gave Trevon some true serum, methinks we would have a much different response. Like, Dak's reputation precedes him. He was absolute puke against the 49ers last year. Dallas was down 13-0 in that game, 23-7. They had a helter-skelter comeback in that playoff game. Prescott ends up running out the clock for Shanahan and the 49ers. He followed that up by leading the NFL this season in interceptions, which I don't believe is a positive stat, but he was only tied for the lead. Oh, okay, well, that makes it better. We'll sugarcoat it. He was just tied. He didn't lead by himself. Feeble for large stretches of the season. You talk about a bad situation at the end. Most times you want to go pedal to the metal. You want to have that final act, give you some confidence going to the playoffs. And boy, was he terrible against the Washington football team at the end of the year. But that's how this has gone. In big games, Dak Prescott is known to get brain freeze. You know how you get that ice cream, you eat a little too fast, and you get that brain freeze? If he loses this weekend, Dak will be 1-4 in his postseason career for Dallas and will have now gone more than 4 years since he got his only win as a postseason quarterback. Now, typically, you don't last that long under those situations with a franchise that supposedly is striving for the championship. And if you look at the comps on Dak Prescott, if you look at the nicknames he's had, the Stat Bandito, we've called him that there, Dink and Dunk Dak. But typically, against bad teams, he's okay. And that's actually a positive here. And that's why this becomes a bit of a quagmire to handicap this game. We'll do Benny versus the Penny on the Friday podcast, the 5th hour. Download it. But Tampa Bay is not a quality team. And I've been screaming and shouting, and I know the NFL media machine is desperately trying to prop up the Buccaneers as something they are not, and how everyone should pace up and down and be scared and biting their fingernails. Oh, it's so scary. It's so scary. I don't see it that way. Now, they have a losing record. They lost to the Falcons with backups in the final game. But even if they had won that game, they would have been a game above 500 in a dog food division. A dog food division with a dog who's diseased with fleas. Nail-biting wins against a Cardinals third-string quarterback. The Saints, who blow. The Rams, who were no good this year. And the Falcons. You're not exactly the pillar of the NFL community with that record. They had no breathing room. And so you look at this matchup and you're like, well, Dak Prescott should be able to move the ball against Tampa. Now, I'll tell you what, if he goes out there and has an El Stinko, I'll bet you dollars to donuts that they say he's hurting, that there's some injury that he didn't talk about, that is some underlying condition. But he should play well in this game on Monday night. But he has a history of being lethargic in the postseason. He goes out there, he ends up sweating. He gets that flop sweat more than a sinner in church, right? I mean, it adds an extra layer to the drama. All right, last thing here, final point. So how likely is Jerry Jones to shake it up in Dallas if the Cowboys do stumble? Now, I realize we're putting the things out of order here. They haven't played the game yet, and what are we doing here? We're messing up the order of events, but I want to get out in front. And we talked about this earlier with Mike McCarthy, but despite all of the bluster, and there's a lot of bluster, Jerry Jones has been relatively loyal in the last 10 years or so. He does not make the irrational move. He probably should. The clapper, Jason Garrett, was given a lot of extra rope. Mike McCarthy, though, is from outside the circle. So you would assume if the Cowboys go out and do a faceplant, the trap door opens up and they fall into a pit of hungry vipers, that McCarthy will be on thin ice. But all options are on the dinner table for Jerry Jones. From raiding the hotel minibar and drowning his sorrows in a bunch of whiskey to the nuclear option, which would be to play some Miley Cyrus, bring in the wrecking ball, right? Bring in the wrecking ball. Heads will roll. The demo team. Most likely, a coordinator would go down, 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 down to the dungeon. To the dungeon. I'm looking at you, Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator, but more likely Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. There will be a human sacrifice of employment as collateral damage if the Cowboys blow this against a losing Tampa Bay team. The nuclear option would be to change one of the faces of Mount Jerrymore. Now, that's likely going to happen anyway. Zeke Elliott, the Cowboys can say bye-bye to Zeke Elliott. They have Tony Pollard. Zeke Elliott likely will not be back next year. But what about Dak Prescott? From a sports talk radio standpoint, the Cowboys will provide tremendous theater. And even if they win this game, they're not long for the playoffs, right? They're still tickling the dragon, and this is not going to go so well. It is interesting to note, as I've started to do some of my homework because I'm a loser and I look at these games, the last 6 games of the regular season, I don't think Tom Brady was very good, but he was, if you look at the numbers, neck and neck with Dak Prescott. They were essentially the same quarterback. The last 6 games, Dak Prescott of the regular season had 13 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Tom Brady had 11 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. The passer rating, Prescott's passer rating, the last 6 games of the regular season, 87.5. Tom Brady's passer rating, 87.7. Both of them were under 7 yards per pass attempt, which is not good. Off the grid, in my opinion. So the margins are not that far apart between these two guys. I'll give my pick on Friday, but that's where we are in the Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.